People of Reddit, what was that yup I'm fucked moment? Years ago at one of my first jobs, I accidentally knocked over a massive, easily over 7 feet tall, pallet of hard liquor. If I had to guess, I probably destroyed somewhere around $10,000 worth of booze. I somehow managed to wreck nearly all of it. I was on my knees hyperventilating, babbling, etc. Looking back on it, I was probably having an anxiety attack. I was certain that I was going to get fired. My boss was clearly irate, but when he saw me freaking out I think he took pity on me. He just told me to be more careful and didn't let me pull any pallets without being supervised for a while. When HR was in the room for my surprise 1:1 with my boss. 6 months into my marriage, my wife approached me and said she wanted to quit her job so she could focus on studying for her CPA. I said cool, I'll handle your bills in the meantime, student loans, car payment, $30,000 dental bill she was paying off from before we met, we hadn't merged finances yet. Week later she tells me never mind, her job asked her to stay part-time while keeping her full-time salary. I couldn't believe our luck, and thought things were going well. 8 months into my marriage, I walk into my home after a normal day at work and the first thing my wife says to me is, I hope I don't cheat on you. This is when I knew things were not as I assumed them to be. Spoiler alert, she was having an affair with her married co-worker that she had never mentioned to me before. They confessed their love for each other during goodbyes after she turned in her notice. Then the part-time arrangement was made. He conveniently traveled to our city once or twice a month for a week and stayed in a hotel on the company's dime. You can guess the rest. Next month would have been our 5-year anniversary. I miss the wife and best friend I thought I had, good riddance to the scumbag she turned out to be. My husband of 27 years passed away suddenly from a heart attack. We had 1 grown child and 2 teenagers still at home and in private school. Everything in my life changed in 5 minutes. Every short-term plan like dinner with friends, the Friday night poker game, picking his suits up from the laundry, mundane things. Long-term was worse, plans for vacation, paying off the house, all the things you think you will do over time with your partner. It was the worst day of my life. Still is 22 years later and nightmares continue. I was going down a hill on my bike, doing like 20 to 30 miles per hour, and my hat flew off. And dumbass 13 Yomi said, I gotta go get my hat. And pulled both brakes. Last thing I remember about that crash was seeing my feet in the air and the bike coming down on top of me, thinking well fuck. When the wife asked to go for a drive in the country. 5 minutes away from town she looks at me and says, do you want a divorce? My first day on the job at my first real job. It was at Apple Computer and I was a temp. I told them I never drove a forklift and he showed me how. Then he tells me to test me. I had to pull a few pallets of 2 meg profiles, 1980 so they were massive, they were lie, $2,000 each and I had to drive down a narrow hole dug out of several rows of them. Going in I did great and I grabbed the stack perfectly. I start to back up and had a brain fart and steered it the wrong way and knocked down a whole wall of them. Like 30 plus pallets with 8 per pallet so about 480k worth of product and they scattered across the floor. Everyone comes running and there I am still on the lift but now fully exposed looking like an idiot. Yup. I am fucked. I got off the lift, walked to the boss's office and said, well, it was fun while it lasted but can you sign my card and I'll just leave. He asked me why I was quitting and I explained what happened and that I was sorry. He asked if I did it on purpose and of course I said no. He said, so go clean it up and send them all to the QC department to make sure they are okay. Only 2 were physically damaged but it took a lot of rebo seeing the damaged boxes. I was shocked but did it and at the end of the shift I asked if I should come back and he said everyone makes mistakes. Just don't make it a habit. The coolest boss I ever had. He hired me after I completed my needed hours at the agency. I worked there 15 years and they paid my college tuition and I got my MBA while working there. Some car merged at the wrong time on the freeway causing a chain reaction of people slamming on their brakes. I managed to stop in time. But I heard the sound of tires screeching too loud and quick behind me and in that 2 seconds before it happened I was like oh fuck and a truck slammed into my car's rear end. I was driving in stop and go traffic on the freeway and I noticed the car behind me was varying the distance between us, like he was distracted. We came to another stop in traffic and I looked in my rear view mirror and see him looking down. I knew he was hitting me. Sure enough, bam. What sucked for him was it was his GF's car and he had to call her for the insurance info in front of the cop, which led to them having a full-blown fight over speakerphone. The moment I pressed the accelerator and brake at the exact same time on an electric scooter without a helmet. I saw the part of the road I had just drove over, but I was looking up through the sunroof. I was changing the bulbs on some emergency exit lighting when the power went out to the entire building. Thousands in damages due to major manufacturing equipment suddenly stopping. Turns out the whole block was down and I had nothing to do with it, my god the relief. The second I realized I couldn't move my legs after being shot. I was in the back of a car when someone shot at us and knew I had been shot, but the moment we got to the hospital and everyone started yelling at me to get out of the car I just couldn't. One of my friends pulled me by the arm to help me get out but I ended up falling to the ground and hitting my head so bad I ended up waking up 3 days later. But that fraction of a second when my brain realized what had happened and how bad it was will always stick with me, even 30 years later. Prepared for an exam all night, accidentally prepared for the wrong chapter of the subject. When a righty-tighty becomes a righty-loosey. I was home alone and was doing the dishes and I dropped a ceramic bowl. I jolted my hands down instinctively to catch it and it cracked in half and a sharp, jagged edge stabbed into my arm and completely severed one of the tendons in my arm. It started gushing blood like I've never seen before and I screamed out to Siri to call 911. It took 3 tries before Siri understood me. By the 3rd try I was beginning to lie on the floor and watch the blood pool around me. Everything was going fuzzy, then I got a knock on the door. I managed to drag myself over to the door and unlock it before I passed out. My downstairs neighbor had heard me screaming for Siri to call 911 and found me on the floor in a pool of blood. He drove me to the hospital and they patched me up. Best part? The tendon I ruptured is one that the surgeon described to me as a spare part, so I didn't need any additional surgery and my arm is fine now. Just a strange, random scare that could have gone a lot worse. 60 miles per hour around a blind corner on a touring motorcycle. And there was a rock slide happening 50 feet ahead. I was searching for a job right after the end of my college years in March. My parents were furious about me because I couldn't find one. Found one in a chicken factory 3 months after. The smell and the meat texture, mixed with the conveyor belt in front of me, made me sick. Asked my boss where the toilets were, vomited hardcore. I looked at the toilet, full of vomit and thought, yup, I'm fucked. My other boss brought me outside to breathe. Vomited once more. They sent me home very nicely, telling me it happens and that the job was not fitted for me. Lost my job one day after being hired. Cried in my car while driving home. I knew my parents were going to kill me for this. They did. Edit, people reminded me the word was conveyor belt instead of treadmill, thank you lol. I started smoking at 17, without the knowledge of my parents. My dad had just beaten cancer and quit and my mom was attempting to do the same. My dumbass didn't tell them. Fast forward to 19, I'm out with some friends and forget to hide my pack. Smaller brother walks into my room to get something and finds the pack. He calls me sobbing, asking me why I want to kill myself and get cancer like dad. I respond with shit. My friends look at me, I look at them, and they get it. They drive me home. And at my window, my brother is looking at me while with mom on the phone. Holy shit. I went upstairs to my brother and he shut the door and didn't come out for 3 hours. I couldn't stop crying. I didn't care about the punishment, I was scared I had forever fucked up my relation with my younger brother. He still teases me about it to this day, but out of respect for my brother, I've never and will not light another cig in my life. Traffic moving through a roundabout and I'm trying to enter, but have to stop until I can enter safely. Look in my rear view mirror and see a person who doesn't seem to be paying attention, and even if they did, there'd be no way to stop. I was counting 3, 2, 1. Boom. Rear end of the car folded in and tweaked my back for a few weeks. That's the first time I had to deal with the police and they were certainly some suspicious FKS. Cop is looking through all the visible parts of my car with a flashlight and I innocently asked what he was looking for anything. His reply was, should I be looking for anything? Was sailing and thought it would be a good idea to let my friend try steering. We are both in our 20s and I'm fairly experienced sailing. Before I handed it off to him I explained why the boom is dangerous. For those who don't know, it can swing wildly and is pretty much head level, so if you are not aware it can very easily kill or injure someone. Not 1 minute after I handed off the helm, I was still in the cockpit and he suddenly tacks. I just remember the boom swinging towards my face and thinking it was over. Somehow I contorted my body and hit the deck. Needless to say, he spent the rest of the trip away from the helm.